Good day and welcome to Commerce Today. My name is Darin Newbold, and as a host here, we also have Josh. Josh Warren is with me as always, and we're excited to be here. And, well, we always have a little bit of fun here, and Josh has the flowery shirt to prove it. And with that, we've got what we're calling the Retail Showdown, lessons from TJ Maxx and Temu. So that's the Battle Royale or the Battle Retail. I don't know how you say that. I
see what you did there.
I tried.
You did try. You try. That's good. So, yeah, and this all comes down to a quote from TJX, you'll hear throughout this episode, parent company of TJ Maxx and like 5 other brands. Their CEO made a remark in their recent earnings call. And honestly, I think of the scene in Mad Men where, someone gives Don Draper some feedback and his response is, well, I don't think of you at all. So the CEO of TJX, when asked about Temu, said, "We see very little issue with them taking market share from us. I could see that their business model could overlap with some other brick and mortar guys or some online guys for sure, but we just don't see them as bumping up with our customer base or in use."
Interesting. Yes, definitely a very Don Draper, Mad Max kind of quote. Well, I guess, what does that end up looking like, Josh? I mean, I know what TJ Maxx is. I've seen Temu a bit, but where do they go? How can he say something like this?
Yeah, well, and it's just interesting too. I mean, just the dynamics between the two companies. I think it's such a good example of there's this ongoing fight that a Wall Street Journal article started of which is more important, each e-commerce or brick and mortar stores. And that's really what this whole battle is about is, okay, we have a company in TJX that is very store first, and we have Temu that is obviously online only.
All online, yeah.
And yeah, we'll have to dig in to get to the meat of it, but there's definitely some interesting dynamics there.
Well, is there anything, I guess, kind of specific about their overall approaches and their business models and the way they're kind of really going after their business that sets them apart and that would even put their CEO, and I forget the name already. I know you talked about it.
Ernie Herrmann. Why
to allow Ernie to kind of be in a position where he'd feel comfortable saying something like that?
Well, first of all, I think he's a very brave gentleman for taking that stand. That's one of those remarks like the Kodak CEO that said, no one will ever want a digital camera. So yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to TJX. So they're an off-price retailer. They operate TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Home Goods, and Sierra. And there's one other home brand they have as well. And they really have this business model that in some ways is very similar to Temu and in some ways is very different. And those differences, I think, are the key. Because TJ Maxx, their model really is branded merchandise, so higher quality merchandise, but at deep discounts and in like a treasure hunt environment. Like you never know when you go to a TJ Maxx what they might have. Temu, though, on the flip side of that, so they are a very new, they were launched in September of 2022, very new online marketplace. And really their business model is they want to be the absolute cheapest, and they are going to take things directly from manufacturers in China and sell them straight to consumers in America. So eliminating every step that is in kind of the supply chain for TJX. Their focus really is, there's a little bit of a treasure hunt aspect, but it's basically, if you're not so worried about quality and you're really worried about price, go to Temu. They have been really expanding aggressively. They spent $2 billion on ads just on the Meta platforms last year. So that's Facebook and Instagram. So $2 billion. So.
Oh yeah, I can't spend a second on Facebook without seeing one or more of their ads. And I noticed in the notes that you had that we'd put together on this, I wanted to ask you a little bit about on Temu, their gamification and any kind of and how they're doing their social engagement.
Oh yeah. So we'll dive in a little bit deeper on that, as well as on TJX. So I mentioned at TJX kind of that treasure hunt. So almost like an in-store gamification. They are heavily reliant on stores versus Temu, who has none. So TJX, they actually, one of their brands shut down their e-commerce site entirely and went straight back to brick and mortar. Now, the main brand, TJ Maxx, does still have a large e-commerce presence, but they're not totally reliant on it. They do have a really interesting mix. So Temu, you're going to find kind of the same things like products. If you see a product on Temu today, chances are you'll see it there in a month.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a TJ Maxx store, those products you see today, you may not ever see them
again. Yeah.
So yeah. And then on the Temu side of it, we talk a lot about Temu in the US. They've actually already expanded to 49 countries. They're in more countries now than TJX is. So that was a pretty quick expansion. And it really is about that low cost and that aggressive marketing. They even I forgot to mention, they did Super Bowl ads. Like the last time I saw a company that young selling online in a Super Bowl ad, I think it was pets.com back right before the .com the bubble burst.
Exactly.
So yeah, they do, I mean, cynically, if you want to look at it cynically. And, tangent, but I play a fair bit of video games and I've actually learned, I know, how dare I? And there's these details that have come out about how the very big video game companies have hired psychologists to figure out, okay, what will get you to play longer? What will get you to buy more of these totally irrelevant, random, sets of gear in the game that don't actually change the game at all, just make your character look different? How can we get you hooked and get you buying those more and more? That's what Temu is doing as well. They have really, you look at kind of the deepest, darkest ways to get people hooked on an experience, and they've done it. So there's referral programs, they run special promos, they have games in the app. They really try to get you to not only get hooked on Temu, but get your friends to get hooked on Temu. And that goes way beyond anything I've ever seen TJX do.
Wow, that is crazy. Well, kind of closing that out at least on the Temu side of it, I can only imagine there's got to be some challenges, maybe even a little controversy.
There is. So they have dodged a little bit of the intensity that, say, TikTok has been getting. But I think they may be up next after we see what happens with the TikTok ban. So there's a lot of regulatory scrutiny. They actually utilize, and I think that's putting it nicely, a loophole in the customs laws. So there's a law, the de minimis law, that basically says if you ship something into the country and it's valued at less than $600, you don't have to pay duties on it. And this was designed for Americans on vacation that wanted to mail packages back home. Well, Temu's using this to where they don't have to declare, and the USPS doesn't collect duties on any of these packages you're getting straight from China. So versus product you buy in a store, somebody's paid some duties on that somewhere to get it here in the US. Also because, and there's some great memes about this, but because it's coming straight from a manufacturer in China that maybe has been in business 100 years, maybe he's been in business 100 hours, you never know the quality you're going to get. So there's some people and some friends I have that have gotten some amazing deals. There's also some, I think the best example I've seen is someone that was so excited they shipped their parents a set of outdoor lounge chairs for their backyard. They arrived, and they were from Temu, and they arrived, and they were for a dollhouse. They were like that big. So that wasn't mentioned in the description, and the price was more along the size
of the dollhouse size.
Yeah, so... And then also just the customer service isn't always the best. So definitely some controversy there. Both them and a similar company, Shine, they're trying to, get ahead of this. They're trying to say, oh, we have a U.S. division. We're a U.S. company. One of them has actually applied to join the National Retail Federation, which is for store retailers that are American companies, which everyone's kind of confused by that because they're like, you're a digital retailer from China. But they're trying to get ahead of it and manage it. But yeah, there's definitely some controversy attached.
Well, it sounds like really crazy different models. You have TJ Maxx just having both the omnichannel, having an omnichannel view of it, of both stores and online presence. They're kind of the search, find, treasure hunt type of deal. You have Temu, which is definitely gamifying the online shopping experience and basically being the ultra cheap version of an Amazon in a way, in the way they're looking at it. But let's maybe take it to what are some lessons that we can learn from this? There are some positives out of all of this for sure. It's not just maybe the statement that Ernie made in the earnings call, but more of what can be learned from this, and especially around direct to consumer brands.
First of all, I think it's just such a good example of balance and of how for every business idea, there's a business model that's going to fit better or worse for it. There isn't a one-size-fits-all magic solution. So even calling back that article I mentioned earlier about, has e-commerce saved the brick and mortar store, or is brick and mortar carrying e-commerce? It's not that simple, not that cut and dried. So I think this is a good example of if your business model and your product assortment supports it, then physical stores can be such a good source of a differentiator, a barrier to entry to competitors. They can really do a lot for you. Now, just having a store isn't enough. I've had some posts on LinkedIn recently and in my newsletter about how Target is doing terribly when you look at their earnings calls. They have a lot of stores, but they are doing terribly. And they blamed it on the economy. They even said, hey, consumers aren't buying discretionary items. They're not buying home products. They're not coming to our stores. Then TJX does their earnings call and says, man, people are coming to our stores more than ever. They're spending on discretionary items. We're selling home goods like crazy. So having a store, but also having the right assortment, having the product assortment that fits with your customer and that having the right environment. So getting people into that treasure hunt environment. That's something that Temu tries to do. Like it feels like a treasure hunt sometimes online, but at the end of it, you're kind of, okay, I'm in an app or I'm on a website and I'm shopping online versus they can really curate an experience in a physical store.
Interesting. Well, how about the lessons and kind of the pieces around inventory as well as the marketing and that ultimate customer engagement?
Yeah. So I think TJ Maxx has done a great job around their marketing and specifically around they have affordable products. They don't have cheap products. And what I mean by that is you order something from Temu, maybe it's going to be great quality, maybe it's not. You go into a TJ Maxx store, you're going to get a great price on a product from a brand that you've heard of that is of at least average quality. Like you're not going to find the things that are just going to fall apart the first time you use them. And I think really building that brand over the years, that's what allows them to say things like, we're not even, worried about Temu. It's because their customers know, hey, I don't know about these other brands, but I know when I go to TJ Maxx, I'm going to buy a quality product. It's not going to fall apart on me. And then, the way they manage their inventory, when you think about it, because the business model's evolved over the years, but it really came down to other retailers having products that they couldn't sell, that instead of trying to clearance in their own stores, they would sell it to TJ Maxx, and TJ Maxx would distribute it out into their store footprint. You don't always know what you're going to get with that. And you don't always know, am I going to get something that's this season, last season, next season? And so being able to, the way they've invested in the technology to take in all those products and then get the right merchandise out in the right markets at the right time. They built a big moat there, basically, with their technology.
Interesting. How does this reflect on even in the digital marketing and the how their customers ultimately engage, whether it's Temu or TJ Maxx?
And this is where I think they need to be really careful over at TJ Maxx. All of our customers are aging. And if your attitude is, I don't care about the youngest generation, I've got this great customer base that's been with me for decades, well, at some point that stops working. At some point, those people retire, they go on to fixed incomes, they pass away. You don't want to lose all those customers. And I think that's the risk that TJX has right now, because they're not doing the gamification. They're not doing they're doing some influencer partnerships and some digital marketing, but they're not taking it to the level that Temu is. And that is one of the reasons that Temu is more effectively reaching the younger generations than TJ Maxx is. So they got to be real careful there, because it's going to become, it almost reminds me of the comments that younger generations make about Facebook, about, oh, that's where all the olds are.
Right.
TJ Maxx could very soon be, oh, that's where all the olds shop. And they can make some good money off of that for a little while, but when you take the more long-term view, that could really hurt them. So I think
maybe maybe they need to take a lesson from old Willy Wonka and put a golden ticket somewhere in that treasure hunt that they were going for.
No.
Well, let's take just a quick run through kind of the challenges. What are the overall challenges and opportunities with all of this, with what's been said, and as well as these two different, kind of vastly different but very similar models and approaches?
So I think over at TJ Maxx, they need to be careful with this attitude of, they almost have this attitude of digital can't touch us. And I think even shutting down e-commerce for one of their brands, that shows me that their board and their executives really don't understand the future of e-commerce and don't understand the future of omnichannel. And so I think there's some challenges on the horizon for them there. I think that instead of having an attitude of, well, our customers aren't even interested in Temu, maybe they should be a little more curious and be like, well, why is Temu so successful? Why would someone that shops at our store ever consider shopping at Temu? Are there things we can learn and an experience we can build out around e-commerce and omnichannel? I think there's some really interesting things that they could do to push a little bit further into gamification. Because that treasure hunt atmosphere, that screams gamification.
Absolutely. They
haven't really touched that. So, and then Temu, Temu. They are one giant challenge and opportunity. I think that already there's been videos that come out of how they treat their employees and the shipping and sorting facilities, some of the logistics facilities, and nothing that crossed the line into like illegal, but starting to push up against the line of, especially the younger generation that they're kind of building their business model on. They're going to start looking at that and saying, I don't want to buy from a company that behaves in that way. So I think there's a book I think I've referenced before called Whoops, I'm in Business, about when you have something that just takes off a lot faster than you realize, you're still always trying to catch up to it. I think in some ways Temu took off faster than they expected. They don't have the processes and kind of the long-term view in place yet. I think they're all just kind of excited of like, wow, we can go out and drop $2 billion on advertising because we're, making so much money right now.
Right.
And not thinking about, like how sustainable is this and how do we keep it sustainable? And again, flipping it around, that's what TJX has done so well with, is they've been around for decades and they can say, okay, we've learned that this is how, no matter what the economy does, no matter where consumer sentiment is, we are always going to drive people to buy from us.
Gosh, I almost wonder, is there a merger that could make sense? Well, that we'll leave for another episode. We need to land this one, Josh. So is there any real quick last takeaways that you want people to kind of walk away with from this?
I think it's a really good example of don't just copy what some other big site is doing or some other big brand is doing. Know your customers. I mean, we didn't talk a ton about TJ Maxx versus Target. I do have an article on LinkedIn about that. And when you look at that, it's really that TJ Maxx knows their customers really well, and they have built a relationship with those customers. And I think that whether you are digital only or if you're omnichannel and you have that brick and mortar store presence, making sure you know your customers and you're well connected to them is how you'll have long-term sustainable growth.
Totally makes sense. Well, as always, catch Josh on LinkedIn, Joshua Warren. Definitely see his posts and all of our content there or on YouTube. We welcome your comments and we love to hear from you as always. With that, thanks for joining us and we look forward to catching up with you next time. Take care.